in that Days Inn parking lot after she had heard her father and mother arguing in that same parking lot. Joining me now to talk about what we just witnessed, the openings from both sides, and that first witness, defense attorneys Thomas Flugum and Delisa Williams. Glad to have you both. Delisa, to you first. Let's talk about the opening statements from both sides. We'll start with the prosecution. What stood out to you from the prosecution's open, maybe what they did right, and maybe some lost opportunities?
So what they did right was lay out the facts, right? The narrative that they want the jury to know. What bothers me is that he didn't speak as the voice of the victim, right? This is a lady who just lost her son 5 days ago. And now
buried her that morning.
Buried him that morning, and I didn't feel the emotion that goes with that event. We heard about the bystander who was helping. It was just very clinical.
Absolutely, Thomas. The missed opportunity there maybe was to make him more of a monster, because this is all about punishment. Really, this is, for all practical purposes, an extended sentencing hearing here we're witnessing here. What should we do as a society? What should these Missouri citizens do with Danny Welty? Because he shot her. Everybody admits that.
Well, as a defense attorney, you have two opportunities to really tell your story. One is in the open and one is in the close. And so you want the jury to be able to put themselves behind the eyes of the people that were involved. I think that the most emotionally invested people were obviously the victim and her daughter. So I think that the prosecutor missed an opportunity to tie into some of that emotional, taxation on them, describe the event as it would have been through their eyes. I mean, Bethany walking downstairs, seeing her mother laying there in a pool of her own blood with a gunshot wound to the back of the head after she just got off the phone with her dad and he said, "I ruined everything." I mean, that is the story. To focus on this innocent bystander who didn't know these people, yeah, it's important that the gun was cleared 5 times. It's important that he ran past him. But the emotional juice, what the people want to hear and what the story that they want told, is this family dynamic. How did it impact that family? And ultimately, is this defendant, a good dad, or was he a crazy person who was snapping at everybody? And I think that, the prosecution missed an opportunity to really, taint the jury against the defendant by describing that scene in more detail.
Yeah, they're proving their case, but the case doesn't need proving. What we're talking about here is empathy for the defendant, really, is what the defense is relying on. Let's listen to a bit of the prosecution's opening statement, Matt Wilson talking about what happened.
Shortly after this, defendant then retreats to his vehicle. He gets in his car and he decides he's going to call Bethany. And he tells Bethany, "I'm sorry." Bethany says, "For what?" And that's it. That's all he says. He hangs up. He makes several calls from the time that he is seen shooting Echo Welty until the time he turns himself in at the police department.
Delisa, that, again, what you said earlier, clinical. He's very clinical because he does have the facts on his side, and he's laying out the facts of this case. But emotion really is going to drive this one, isn't it?
It is. And the defense is going to go hard on the defendant being a distraught dad who was all over the place, probably suicidal himself. He's lost his girlfriend, he's lost his wife, but most of all, he's lost his son. That very important relationship is now over, and the defense is going to play on that so hard. And so this is the state's opportunity.
Right, to switch that emotion, turn him into a monster, not just the grieving dad.
To start off in the beginning with the victim's voice.
Absolutely.
And the children's voice.
The children's voice, yes. What really stuck out to me was when Bethany was talking about getting the call from her dad, and then immediately she knew, uh-oh, something's wrong, feared for her mother's safety, goes to the room where the kids are, no mom. But you can just see those other kids sitting in the room, where's mom, And she now becomes their mother in that instant.
And we saw it in the clip. You know, he talks about the phone call that Bethany's receiving, and then he goes and starts talking about these other phone calls the defendant made. You know, he's
Right.
not talking about what Bethany did at that point. He turns and starts talking about the defendant covering it up, you know, or doing whatever he was doing to kind of get away from the scene. And I think that the defense attorney is picking up on that already, because you saw his first question to Bethany was him being as charming as possible. Is there anything, do you need a few minutes?
Right.
That was more emotional and empathetic than the prosecutor was to the victim as she's sitting up there crying and wiping her face with tissues. You know, and I think that was, you could really see the dichotomy between the two, because then when the prosecutor gets back on redirect, do you recall 40 seconds ago when he was asking you about this stuff, and ignores, again, the emotion. And so I think that's hurting them. Is it going to make a difference at the end? As you said, Ted, the facts are kind of stacked up against them. But as far as us sitting here watching it, I mean, I think that the defense attorney is doing a better job of humanizing himself and his client than the prosecutor is making him look like a demon.
Let's take a little listen to Charles James in his open.